Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at the DRF Friday race of the day. It is race 8 at Belmont at the Big A, going the 6.5 furlong distance for the older runners, an optional claiming allowance event, high level condition for this race, $100,000 optional claiming tag. And Mike, as we take a look at the field for this race, the theme here I would say is back class, because you've got a lot of horses in this field that at one point of their careers were graded stakes quality. I'm thinking of runners like Baby Yoda, Repo Rocks, even Top Gunner on occasion. But the big question in this race is who is in good form right now?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really tough to decipher that stuff as far as some of those, old hard hitting horses go. I mean, clearly, Repo Rocks, Baby Yoda, they show up with their good racing here. They're going to be really, really tough. I'm just not sure if they're still capable of running like that.
And that's kind of why I made the number 4, 24 Mamba, the clear-cut 9-5 morning line favorite, because at least with him, he's coming off a couple of really solid performances, and you know that he's a horse that, while he had back class, he's back in good form right now, so we'll see if he can sustain it. This race is the DRF race of the day, so you can also get free past performances if you want to handicap along with Mike and me. Just head to the race of the day page at drf.com, create that free account, and you can get access to classic, formulator, and TimeformUS past performances for this 8th race at Aqueduct on Friday. Let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector. And Mike, there's not a ton of speed signed on in here. And I think the big question regarding this pace projector is how much speed we're going to see from some of these runners that do have it in them to show a lot of speed, just haven't necessarily done it lately. And the number 3 Top Gunner kind of falls into that category.
Yeah, not only is recent form a real question, but yeah, so is pace in this race. I mean, I thought it was really hard to figure out who was going to be on the lead. There's a lot of tactical speed in here, though, so I don't feel like necessarily just making the lead is some kind of huge advantage in this race, because I think there are going to be a bunch of horses who are up close. The number 7 Lightman, he's off of a layoff here, but he's fast enough to get up there if they get aggressive in this race. I know Baby Yoda is like a terrible gate horse recently, but he's a horse who's at his best when he gets forward in his races. I wonder how aggressive they'll get here off a little layoff.
Let's go through this field from the rail out, beginning with the number 1 War Stride, a horse who is coming in off the highest last out buyer speed figure of anybody in this field when he got a 95 for this allowance victory that we're taking a look at in the middle of May. And this was just a first level allowance race, so he's taking a pretty significant step up in class here. But Mike, this horse has continued to step up in class going back to the early part of the winter, and it just seems like he's in career form right now for trainer George Weaver. I will say, this 95 buyer is one that I'm looking to see get repeated here, because you look at the card from that day, this race was surrounded by 2 turf races on either side of it, and felt like maybe one of the dirt races that was just kind of isolated from the rest and was maybe tough to make a figure for.
Yeah, it was also, a pretty easy pace there for this horse to just sort of sit on top. You get that kind of a trip till you're sitting on top of a horse who's totally overmatched, not going fast. And, it's a recipe to look really good winning the race. And he did. This horse, he is in good form, though. We've sort of opened this thing up talking about how some of the other horses, maybe they're not in great form right now. At least War Stride's in really good form right now, and he should be forward from the rail.
The number 2, Sheriff Bianco, was a horse that's been good for a very long time, ever since he was claimed by Linda Rice. Not always winning his races, but he just continues to run well race after race, hits the board quite often, has been a real moneymaker for his connections. Kind of feels like at this point in his career, Mike, he's been a little bit up and down. He did get the victory in the Safe Florida Sandy 2 back in February when Linda was running him back on 1 week's time. That's something that has worked for him in the past, but maybe that took a little something out of him, those 2 races in 7 days, because he came back for his next start in the Haynesfield and just never looked like he got out of first gear. He didn't really get over the muddy track that day. He's been freshened up since then, so we'll see if he can bounce back, but he is a horse that feels like he needs some pace to close into, and we already talked about, we don't know how much pace is going to develop in this race.
Yeah, exactly. Probably smart that they gave him a little bit of a break there out of the Haynesfield. Listen, he's another one. He's good enough to beat these horses if he shows up with his good race. He's certainly, he's one of the horses, even though he may not always win, he always shows up. I mean, it's not one of those horses you're going to see a bunch of clunkers on his card. I mean, he usually runs. It's just a question of whether or not he gets the right trip and then is good enough to beat the horses he's run against. He can beat these horses for sure. I would probably be more inclined to use him underneath, but I'm a big fan of this horse. He can win.
Moving on to the number 3, Top Gunner. He is a horse that is a little tough to read in this race because you know he's got a performance in him that will beat this field. He earned that 104 buyer back in January that kind of jumps off the page when you look at his past performances. Clearly better than his surrounding races, but if he can get back to a performance like that, he's going to be in front in the early stages and no one's going to be able to touch him in here. The problem is that ever since then, he has just run 3 races in a row that aren't quite at that level. I know that he did win 2 back at Keeneland. That was just a 3-horse field. He beat 2 overmatched rivals in that race. And Mike, I'm a little bit bothered by since the fact that they've taken to Kentucky, he's just kind of lost his early speed.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see what he does because you're right. I can't argue with anything that you said. I mean, he's obviously got a race in him that's going to make him really tough. He's also just not very reliable at all. When I evaluated his 2 races since they took him to Kentucky, I think maybe I have a little bit of a different opinion than you do. I know he only got an 84 buyer and he only beat 2 horses when he won 2 back. I thought he ran really well in that race. He just sort of let the other 2 horses go, sat off them, and really won that race easily. And, I guess it remains to be seen how good they are. But Roll On Big Joe, who was the favorite in there, was coming off of a triple-digit buyer, graded stakes win, and California. And, of course, if you just look at the PPs for Top Gunners, the horse that came back to beat him in another fast race at Churchill Downs, that horse is in really good form right now. And Top Gunner just sort of ran right by him in the stretch of that race. So I don't know, man. I liked his race 2 back. I hated his race last time, but I'm used to that with this horse. I mean, he's not a horse who's that reliable.
I will say his TimeformUS speed figure for that race 2 back at Keeneland was a lot higher than the buyer. So that might have been a tough one to make figures for. We'll see if he's able to get back to a performance like that. The number 4, 24 Mamba. I said it at the open mic. He's kind of the horse that's just in good form right now. He had run some good races at Aqueduct going back to the winter of 2023 into 2024, was off form for a very long time, but it felt like he started to round back into form this coming into springtime. And his last 2 efforts have both been victories. We'll take a look at the most recent of those when he won first off the claim for Tom Morley and owners Flying P, who have been a potent team together when they claim horses. And he got an absolutely perfect trip to win this race. He sat in the pocket and you can see the split just opens up for him perfectly at the top of the stretch. But Mikey shoots on through and is able to finish off this race nicely and feels like he's not going to have to run a whole lot better than this to beat a field of a similar quality.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he got a perfect trip and got the job done here, but either one of his last 2 performances probably just makes him tough right back against this field. I think the one thing that I've noticed about him that I think is the real change in 24 Mamba is, listen, there were times in the past when he got good and they would run him in stakes races and it never worked out, but he never really had any speed back then. He would just get outpaced by those horses and he couldn't impact. He's got way more tactical speed now.
And I was looking up some stats for trainer Tom Morley in Formulator because you know this, Mike. You look up a lot of stats. When trainers win first off the claim, it's pretty rare that they win back second off the claim as well. Tom Morley has won with 5 of his last 9 runners in the situation that he won with first off the claim. They also win second off the claim. So maybe 24 Mamba can do it again. The number 5 is Repo Rocks. And like we said earlier, he's got some big races in his past to get back to if he possibly can. But he is a 7-year-old now. And those races that he ran back in early 2023 seem like a distant memory at this point. And not that he isn't consistent. He's still running speed figures in the upper 80s at times, even low 90s. But he doesn't win that often, Mike. And it just kind of feels like he lacks that extra kick he really needs in the final 1/8 of a mile to put his races away.
Yeah, it just feels like his really good form is pretty far behind him now. Even with the sort of they've sort of taken steps back in class with him recently too, and it just hasn't really helped him at all. I mean, I don't care about the race 2 back. He doesn't want to go 9 furlongs. I'm not sure what they were thinking running him in that race. But even last time they cut him back, they took him to Parks. It looked like he was in a really good spot there with Lasix and blinkers back on. And I don't know about you, David. I thought he got an overall good trip. He had every chance to win and he wasn't good enough.
The number 6, Baby Yoda, is another with a gigantic speed figure to get back to if he possibly can. The 114 buyer, I think that was 4 years ago, Mike, 2021 at Saratoga when he won that race. It's been an up and down career for Baby Yoda since then. He has gone off form for periods of time. Once in a while, he'll post a really big effort like he did getting back to Saratoga last summer when he upset the grade 2 True North. But since then, as you alluded to, Mike, he's had trouble getting out of the gate. It seems like he's lacked the early speed that he once possessed. And that's a problem for a horse who does his best running when he's forward.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just don't know what you're going to get with him here. He's got to be at least somewhat alert from the gate, it feels like, to run his best race. I mean, you mentioned the True North last year. He ran really, really well at Saratoga. I know he really likes Saratoga, but he ran well that day getting forward. Even the win prior to that in a race, sort of similar to this one where he beat Repo Rocks. I mean, he got out of the gate really well. He was right up on the lead in that race, and he just kept fighting to the end. His good race makes it really, really tough in here. I just don't know if we're going to get it.
Rounding out the field on the outside is the number 7 Lightman, a New York bred facing Open Company in here. And Mike, he's never run a buyer speed figure that really puts him on the level of the top performances of some of those in this race, but at least he's been on an upward trajectory through most of his career, and he is coming off a layoff into this race. But I thought some of his performances prior to going to the sidelines are a little better than they look, particularly the last race where he got involved in an extremely fast early duel, and the 2 horses that were dueling paid the price as that race completely fell apart in that Stallion Series race. He's better than that, and he doesn't need to be so aggressively ridden. So I won't be surprised when he's able to run a little better off the long break.
I agree with that. I mean, every single one of his races is good. Even the last one where maybe you could look at it and feel like he didn't run well, he actually ran really well in there. And all of his prior starts are really good performances. He's tactical from the outside. It's a pretty significant layoff, and it's not like this is an easy spot for him, but we've already sort of been, run through the other horses, David, and sort of taken some shots at them and knocking them a little bit. There's nothing to knock about this horse.
Yeah, and given some of the paces that he's been involved in, his TimeformUS speed figures look a lot more competitive with this field than his buyer speed figures do, which of course take pace into account. Mike, where'd you go in this DRF Friday race of the day?
I think I spent way too much time looking at this race, David, because I didn't know what to do in here. I wound up just taking Top Gunner. I do think he's maybe in a little bit better form than it may appear on paper. We'll see. He's not that reliable, but he should get the right trip in here. His good race is good enough, and he's probably not going to be the favorite. So I took him on top, but I have a lot of respect for your top pick too.
I was this close to just kind of copping out and putting the number 4, 24 Mamba on top because I'm a fan of that horse and he's back in good form right now. It just feels like he's so obvious in a race where so many have questions to answer. So he's probably going to be a short price. And that led me to the number 7 Lightman, who might get a little bit ignored with those lower buyer speed figures coming in off the layoff. And I like the outside draw for a horse that does have tactical speed to possibly get forward in this race. So 7-4-3-2 for me and 3-7-6-2 for Mike in the DRF Friday race of the day, race 8 at Belmont at the Big A. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.